Now let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Faye Watt, and let's queer up the USA view. Crisis for LGBTQ America as HRC lays off 20% of all staff. The Human Rights Campaign is laying off 20% of its workforce in a major restructuring effort. As reported by The Advocate, about 50 employees will be affected when the layoffs take effect on February 12th. HRC leaders cite financial sustainability and rising political threats as key reasons behind the shocking decision. Despite exceeding fundraising goals in past years, raising $85 million in 2023, expenses have outpaced revenue for the HRC, ultimately leading to a net asset decline. The HRC statement said, quote, "To avoid layoffs, we explore a range of cost-saving measures, from attrition to aggressively pushing revenue and evaluating program expenses, but ultimately both strategic and budget reasons led us to this restructuring," end quote. The board has tasked President Kelley Robinson with balancing the budget. Robinson has acknowledged the tough decision, but has also reaffirmed HRC's mission. She said, quote, "Our success has never been determined by the number of staff we have, but by the impact that we make in the world," end quote. Two sources close to this story told Queer News Tonight that the statement does not address the real elephant in the room: Trump and GOP complete rejection of DEI. For much of 2024, these conservatives and their allies have outpaced the LGBTQ traditional social justice organizations, including the HRC. Queer News Tonight continues to report on the growing corporate response to DEI, withdrawing support for LGBTQ organizations, including pride events, major queer charities, and even the HRC's own Corporate and City Diversity Index program. After decades of growth, 2024 became the first year that there was a significant increase of anti-DEI sentiment. The news became worse after the November election. Since the January 20th inauguration, DEI has been under a blistering attack of even its existence. That has led to a financial crisis to LGBTQ social justice causes. Under the condition of anonymity, a source close to the HRC said, quote, "Our advocacy organizations, including the HRC, have not seen attacks like this in the 21st century. Stephen Miller with the Trump administration has already made major gains for rejection of DEI support in corporate America. Anti-LGBTQ activist Robbie Starbuck has had significant success to get major corporations to reduce and even abandon HRC support on diversity issues. This is having a significant impact on how to respond and where the money to do it comes from," end quote. 20% layoff. I'm not surprised, right? But it's a substantial amount of people when you think of the small number of people that are over there at the HRC working hard for our rights. Unfortunately, the HRC has received a lot of criticism recently, for their internal workings, for their endorsements, unfortunately, of both Democratic and Republican candidates, and also its position on the Israel-Palestine issue. Unfortunately, that has also been a big, huge drama going on over there at HRC. If you also remember, we did the story on Alfonso, who was the first Black president of HRC, that he was unfortunately, he was let go, and now he is suing HRC on racial discrimination grounds. So it has not been an easy couple of years for HRC, and all this that's happening with DEI and Trump is definitely not helping the situation one bit.
Well, another elephant in the room that people aren't really talking about yet is the significant financial giving may also be drying up due to the California wildfires, because there's a lot of money there, especially for LGBTQ causes, and there's a lot of donors there who might have been affected by the devastation and may not be able to continue donations. So that's just adding insult to injury.
Yeah.
If I can ask a question, because I'm surrounded by a lot of smart people here, what is the true issue with DEI? I just want to make sure I'm not coming from an ignorant place, because every few years, it seems like the conservative side really sinks their teeth into the most idiotic concepts, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's trans people using restrooms, whether it's drag queen story hour, and now all I'm hearing is DEI. Before I speak from an uninformed place, is there truly any ground in which criticism of DEI is like truly withstanding? Like,
so can I'll take this first round. So DEI was generally introduced because of discrimination against people of color. For instance, if you have a Black woman named Shaniqua that comes into an interview, and that's the last part of the process to get hired, and you have a white dude named David, there is an automatic bias for many people that says, all right, this guy obviously is more intelligent. This is more, regardless of whether Shaniqua is way more qualified, right? And because we see those biases, we do have some of this diversity, equity, and inclusion to help balance out, saying that, okay, obviously this many people being rejected from a job, there's got to be something to it. So let's see if we can, have those different perspectives in there and like make sure that we're safeguarding against discrimination. I will say that many of the DEI programs, a fair criticism I would say of them is that they're not, the amount of money that many of these corporations are putting into it are not getting the results.
Or were.
Yeah.
We're putting into it.
Or were putting into it they weren't getting the diversified group of people that they were saying.
That the intention was supposedly for.
It seems like there's been a lot of mismanagement of it too. So I'm okay with them looking at it. Of course, cutting it out completely is, and the thing is when somebody mismanages it, then you give fuel to the other side to say, look at what just happened.
Look what just happened.
All that money just went into so-and-so's pocket and you're not seeing this.
And Trump and his goons put DEI with wokeness. They've literally put those two things together, which is why you're hearing so much of it, right? The plane crash, right, with the Black Hawk is the DEI, is the reason for that happening is because of DEI. You know what I mean? So, it's just kind of where they're targeting all their hate, right? It's either trans or DEI. That's the reason that the world is upside down, according to the Trump administration.
And it's the same gaslighting that's been going on since the first 4 years.
And DEI, from an HR perspective, being in HR for over 25 years, more than that actually, it started out in the right place back in the 1960s and evolved. And unfortunately, as we've all said at this table, it's being used as propaganda. It's used to fuel hate. It's used to spark, what's out there already as ignorance, and not really be, based on fact. And what Trinidad, you said before, you want to have a good pool. I mean, anytime I was involved heavily in recruiting for companies that were responsible, we had a candidate pool, and we had to have a certain number of candidates for each position. And there was sometimes a temptation for a manager to say, nope, I got this referral. I don't want to see those other people. And our job in HR was to say, we're regulated and funded by the government. We're a government contractor. No, we have to follow these rules.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, right now, with our current POTUS in power, we're going to have to fight even harder. And, but you brought up a good point.
But can DEI continue without that label? Can those hiring practices?
Well, they should. Well, yes.
They can do whatever they want.
That's the hope, is that it will continue.
A responsible company.
Yeah, but I mean, most of these organizations are completely annihilating DEI completely. And when it comes to DEI, you're also protecting disabled folks. It's not just a racial thing, which is which is prominent, but it covers a lot of ground. And they're just taking it as wokeness. You love LGBT. You want everybody to be gay. You're making everybody gay. And people believe it. People feed into it.
And there's also a big issue of ageism. A lot of people don't want to admit that. But, as I get more mature, there have been times where I've actually had people say, well, you're really overqualified. Why would you want to step back into this position at this? And I had to explain, I'm at a certain point in my life, my spouse is retired. And while he may be older than me, I have, I'm going to be working another 10 or 15 years at least. So, it's something that really needs to be looked at. I know with my company, they did eliminate the DE&I, but however, they do have compliance that steps in. So there are hotlines that employees can reach out to in confidence, and they still will take a position, being a funded county employer, to do the right thing.
They've eliminated most DEI courses from universities here in South Florida. We're now, if you want to take that course, it's not, it's an elective. It's not even something to help you get, another what's the word I'm looking for here? Another degree. It won't count towards it either.
And then just to go back to the actual
HRC,
source, the HRC, is that they can still function if we volunteer. Like they may have lost some of their workforce, but I get called, I don't know, twice a week by somebody volunteering in some part of Florida, right? So I think we just need to step up our volunteering game, not in just I mean, donating, but also like, hey, we'll help with this. We'll help spread the word.
And I
We'll
think
be at
that's
an event.
HRC's roots.
And,
was
you know,
volunteers.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it
So
was
I think we can
grassroots.
still do
right.
it.
Was
Right.
knocking on the doors and
Absolutely,
shaking the hands.
yeah.
So we
We
gotta
need
go
to
back
step
to
up.
that.
We really do.
Yes.
Cry at home and then come out and like do what needs to be done.
And we need to not ask for permission. I mean, one of the things when I was at Hollywood Pride, and I was so glad to see, was that the Broward County Library System had books that were open to all diversity, equity, and inclusion type models. And I thought that, you know, Florida was getting away from that and the funding. So I sat there and had a long conversation with the folks from the county system and said how glad I was. I know an author that I featured in prior stories from up north that I want to get his book down here in Florida. I think it's very important, especially for children and teens. So
For sure. For sure.
Absolutely.
All right. So the takeaway is you can still volunteer for HRC, time, talent, and tithing. That's always what I'm taught at Unity on the Bay. You can give one of those three things to an organization like HRC and make sure that they continue to strive and fight for our rights. So that is the big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight.